Aloha and welcome to Native Diaspora. I'm your host, Belinda, also known as Kalani, and this is my cat, Kalohe. And today's episode, we are going to talk creation story, history, medicinal uses of Kalo. And if you are new here, welcome. If you've been following for some time, welcome back. Thank you. And without further ado, let's get started.
I came to realize that we as a people can't ever be sovereign. To be truly autonomous is to be independent and sovereign as a people, as a ohana, as a community. To grow our own food is the biggest act of political resistance that we can do as an occupied people.
Welcome to Native Diaspora. We met through the mahi'ai program, and today we're going to be talking about Kalo or taro. We have some different varieties in the background. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Aloha mai kako, to all of you out there, o Nick Kālāmakani Francisco, o Makaua, mai au, kahi kaulana I ka ua maakua, noho au ma kia au, puna, e kumu au. So aloha, I'm Nick Kālāmakani Francisco. My ohana comes from Makaua on the east side of Oahu. Now I reside in Puna, here on the Mokua Keawe, the island of Hawaii. I'm a teacher and I'm a mahi'ai. I don't consider myself a Kalo expert. I'm a student of Hāloa. I'm very passionate about it, and it is my life that I live. I don't know all the answers. If I learned it from a kupuna, I'm going to say their name.
Can we start with like the creation story?
It's our connection as Native people to all of the elements around us. And when we use the word akua nowadays, we associate akua with God, because we're a Christianized place, with Jesus. Ke akua in the ancient time, an akua is any energy in our world that a kanaka cannot control. So an akua is any energy in our world, the sun, the moon, wind, the rain, the luapele, the volcano. These are things that have energy that a kanaka cannot control. Like, we can petition them, we can pray, we can ask, set our intentions. Well, in the mo'olelo of Hāloa, it's a connection to not just Kalo, our older brother, not just to the ʻāina, but to all of the elements in our world that make life possible, with the clouds and the rain and the stars and the sky and the earth. All of these elements that we cannot control are genealogically connected to. So the mo'olelo, and this is a short version, and there's many ways to tell mo'olelo out there. A'ohe pau ka ʻike I ka halau ho'okahi. But in this mo'olelo that I tell, the akua, Wakea, the Sky Father, and Papa come together. In this, there's a tale of upset and heartbreak, and Mama going off and coming back, having other guys. Oahu was with Lua. The gist of it is that Wakea, Sky Father, and Papa, and some other akua create the islands, the ʻāina first, and then second, Wakea and his daughter, Ho'ohoku Kalani, the Star Mother, they come together and they have a baby, and the baby comes out stillborn, alu. It's misshapen, it's soft. The baby passes away. Mama has a miscarriage, and so they kanu the baby. They bury it behind the hale, and Ho'ohoku Kalani, Star Mother's tears as she's upset, water the ground, and then a kalo begins to grow. They name the baby. This miraculous event that happens, Aloha Nakalau Kapalili. This is something I learned from Uncle Earl Kava. He's a manaleo from Halawa Molokai. He lives on Oahu and teaches classes to carve board and stone, Papa Kalai. But he explains the mo'olelo of Hāloa. So he goes Hāloa, the long stem plant, and the stem is the ha. So loa means long. So Hāloa, the long stem plant. Naka, that shakes and crashes in the wind. So the stems shake and crash in the wind. Lau, the leaves, and kapalili is to quiver. So he says Hāloa, the long stem plant. Naka, that shakes and crashes in the wind. causing the lau to kapalili. In sharing that mo'olelo, Hāloa nakalau kapalili, that interpretation, I really like it because it helps all of us who are still learning. One way to remember that name, because it's a significant name. After they bury the baby and Hāloa nakalau kapalili is birthed in from Ho'ohoku Kalani's tears, they come together again and they have another baby, and this one comes out healthy. The first Hawaiian man, and they name him Hāloa in honor and after his older brother. It's a reminder to him that, hey, it's a kuleana to malama. As a younger sibling, you have to malama Hāloa. And in doing that, Hāloa nakalau kapalili wo malama Hāloa the kanaka. And all of us who are descendants of Hāloa. If we malama the Kalo plant, and in doing that, we have to malama the ʻāina. We have to feed the lepo. We need to understand and kilo outside what's going on and be attentive and aware. And if we do that and we malama, he will malama us by producing big fruit. You can eat the stem too, and the lau as well. We can eat all parts.
I've never eaten the stem.
Yeah, it's called haha. There's many ways to use it in soup, stews, and Uncle Howard Konanui, Uncle Jerry's younger brother. Since Uncle Jerry passed, he shared a lot with me on how to make a dish called haha, and they call it haha, but it's kind of like a coconut cream stew with salted fish, codfish.
Okay.
It's called bakalau in Hawaii. But tastes like chowder, super ono. Yeah, all parts of Hāloa nakalau kapalili can be consumed. We don't really eat the outer skin. Some people eat the inner skin, the ilikana. Some people call that koina. In Puna, that wasn't done from the people I learned from, but other areas, they do eat the inner skin. There's very little that's wasted.
Is there different medicinal properties per eating different parts of
Lau is very, very good for you to eat. A kalo is a complex carbohydrate that breaks down very slowly. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. It's considered hypoallergenic in that there's been documented stories of keiki newborn babies who are so allergic to everything, even their own mother's milk, that they really died, but they fed the baby diluted poi solution, and that kept the baby alive when they were that critical stage after being born to sustain them. It's really an amazing plant, and it's something that we have to continue to eat. Ha is also the breath of life, not just the stem. Many words in Hawaii have different meanings, and so it also means to exhale. So, if you're able to exhale, you're still alive, right? So it is the breath of life. And if we consume Hāloa, and this is something my friend Kaiana Ranos of Kaiana, he said he learned this from Antipua, Kanahele. But if we consume Hāloa, we will have Hāloa, and that our life will be long. And our people and many people across the Pacific and the world for thousands of years. The mo'olelo of Hāloa teaches us that we have kuleana as the youngest brother or sister of the akua, of the sky, the stars, and Papa, the Earth Mother. We have kuleana to malama, that which feeds us, both physically, and the ʻāina, which sustains all life. And it's a different perspective than the Western perspective. Right. Man was given dominion over all things, right? I remember hearing that in at Sunday school when I had to go to church when I was younger. It's a different perspective because we're not in charge. Where the Hawaiian perspective is hiali'i ka ʻāina he kaua ke kanaka. Yeah, the land is the chief, and the man is the slave or the servant. That's a different thought. The land is in charge, and we are the ones who have to work it and tend to it. Because we need the land to sustain us. Different perspective completely. It's a genealogy.
How did kalo or taro become such a staple food here in Hawaii? Like, what is the history of how it was brought here?
Well, in that one mo'olelo, it was created, and we are the descendants of it. But there's many different mo'olelo. There's another mo'olelo that it was brought by the early Polynesian voyagers to come and they brought it in their canoes. There's one mo'olelo of the Kalo pi'iali'i, which was considered one of the most sacred. It has the darkest kohu, or the sap. It looks like cocoa, like blood. Yeah. But that one, it was in some of the early migration stories in Waimea. I think it was one of the kahu his name was Pi'i, but he brought that Kalo variety from Kahiki or the South Pacific.
Yeah. Like I had, I recently learned maybe today that Kalo has like different uses. Like we talked about how you could dye for
Yep.
kappa.
Yeah, there's a lot as far as uses of kalo, aside from just cooking and eating. There's different uses for all of them. Some of them have more itch than others, or the maneo, the calcium oxalate crystals that take time to break down. Some of the lauloas were used medicinally. One auntie told me that she learned from lao lapa'au to dry the ha, and after it dried, then they would make a tea. Something about respiratory issues. That's the first time I had ever heard anybody tell me how specifically they used it. But I know that laulua Palakea ele it was used for la'o lapa'au, but I don't know all of that information. Some of the kalo varieties were used in place of a ho'okupu or an offering. So if you were building a hale and you needed red fish like a kumu or a ve'o, there was a practice of burying a fish. If you were giving an offering and you needed something black, some kalo varieties were used in that sense. There's one called piko ele or ipu lono. So in makahiki, that was an acceptable offering for lono during the times of makahiki season. Some of the kalo, like apuai, which is like a cousin to the pi'iali'i. There's a genealogical connection in Waimea Valley.
The cup one.
That cup, it's a cupped crinkled leaf like
Yeah.
this, and so that one is called apuai. But there's those names are connected in Waimea. These two kalo are connected together, and that they're both kalo ha'a. They're both very sacred. Kalo ha'a is a short, stocky variety. They don't get really, really tall. They're kind of broad and spread out, but they have a little bit broader leaf. The apuai is so crinkled it actually collects the vai that falls from the heavens. Ailani, or another term for that water collected is huawai maka. And then what uncle Kaiana shared it with me, vai haule ole, which is the water that is held up from falling. Water, vai has different levels of sacredness. Water for ceremonial purposes, water that's high is closer to the heavens, so it's considered sacred. Like coconut water is in that realm because it's elevated and hanging and suspending.
Yeah.
Hasn't touched the ground. There's levels of sacredness, but because this vai is collected in the lau and it has not touched the ground, it was considered sacred because it came straight from the heavens. Yeah, it hasn't hit the earth.
Yeah.
It's pure. That water was used for ceremony, blessings, ceremonial purposes, la'o lapa'au for the ali'i, the high ali'i, because it was so pure.
Talking about the water, the vai on the leaf, when you move the leaf, it kind of just like follows.
It's interesting because it doesn't like absorb through the leaves. Lao is very water repellent. You also mentioned dyeing. Some of the varieties that have a real dark sap or have a lot of pigment in their ha were used for boiling. One of our friends used the uahia pele to try and dye. I know ula ula poni was used. It's purple and it has like reddish streaks on the ha, and it's very, very dark. It's super beautiful. You can use it to dye. And some of the kohu, the sap that comes out, or the koko, the real dark one, when you cut the leaf, it does bleed. So you could just print with that right away, especially on some of those real dark varieties. You get.
Why is it red? What is it that makes them have different color? Do some of them have different health benefits because of that, or are they all the same?
Why do we humans, some of us have dark skin?
Right.
Like why do some of us have less melatonin than others? I'm not sure about that. But we're all made up of so much genetic diversity. And so the way I explain the varieties is like these are like cousins, yeah? We kind of look the same, but kind of don't, right? Because we have a different parent they breeded with. There's that genetic mixing, but there is some similarities in the family traits. Each of these kalo varieties are cousins in some of them are tightly related in ohana, and some of them are dark, some of them are light, some of them are streaked, some of them have freckles, some of them have real shaggy roots like hair on the bottom, some of them don't. They have different shaped lao, different shaped veins. The color of the sap can be a clear color, some can be light red, a rose. You can see some that look as dark as our blood, like the PLE, and there's a couple others that have real dark sap.
Did how did you get into this? Did you choose Kalo, or did Kalo choose you? What sparked this journey?
I grew up always eating poi. My mom's side is Hawaiian, hala, maulili, and married a gay family from Waimea, Kauai. I was kind of interested, but I never really knew about growing it too much. I got to work in a few loʻi growing up on Oahu, and then I met Uncle Winston Kong and Uncle Tommy Young, and they used to run a loʻi out in Kaneohe by the Wimmer Community College. I really started to learn a little bit more just in working with them for my community service hours. And then I moved up to the Big Island, and I sat next to uh, a guy named Jason Scott Lee on the airplane. I had seen an article about him growing kalo on his 25-acre farm he has up there. And we started talking story. He invited me over, and I kind of learned a little bit from him, working with him in his mala. A mala is a dryland kalo patch, mahi'ai, and then loʻi kalo is a wetland flooded taro patch. So there's a difference. So this is the mala. So I didn't know that until I went to Waipio and I met Kia Fronda, and I was like, oh, yeah, we get loʻi up at Jason's house, and he's like. It's like, it's not loʻi, it's a mala. Yeah, and then later you're like, oh yeah, well, I'll plant these in the loʻi. Not a loʻi, it's a mala. It's like, okay, uncle, amai, kalamai. So yeah, and it's a common thing because that's just a term everybody is associated with, but not every environment in every ahupa or region had those kind of flowing patches with those broad kula lands. Yeah. Those are more on the eroded islands. And Waipio is really unique because it's on, a newer side of the island. You know, geologically speaking, compared to Kauai and Oahu, I think there was some sort of a landslide that created that valley. After I met Jason, I met Uncle Jerry Konanui, and I started learning more about him. Jason taught me a lot about real natural processes because he had gone to Japan and learned from a man named Masanobu Fukuoka how they use natural systems to regenerate the soil and build and grow heirloom varieties of rice. He kind of applied that to his place in Volcano, and I learned a lot about natural systems and processes and the importance of healthy lepo or soil. When I met Uncle Jerry, I started to learn a lot more about techniques of growing kalo, but I didn't really choose it. It just kind of happened. I like to tell this story when I was with Jason and we had another friend named Earl. We went down to Walmart to get something, and there are these two aunties sitting on the side, and they looked just so sad. And we picked them up, and they looked so terrified and worried. And we I hopped in the back of the extra cab of the truck, and the aunties came and squeezed in, and they were like, "Oh, auntie, what's the matter?" It's like, "Oh, we missed our bus. We don't have enough money for the bus, so we gave them a ride." And in talking, they shared, that they were hungry, and one of them bought an extra, like, 99-cent burger for the other, and they didn't have enough money to catch a ride home. They had missed the bus, which was free at the time. After we dropped them off, we started talking about how sad it was that our kupuna are living on such a limited amount of money, and they're eating McDonald's. I forget how much money they had allocated, like maybe like $4 or $5 for food for the day, and on their fixed income. It was just heartbreaking. And so I kind of wanted to do something where I could try to begin to feed people. Growing up on Oahu, the sovereignty movement was real big when I was little, with Uncle Bumpy Kanahele occupying the parking lot area by Makapu Beach Park. Sovereignty was such a big thing, and I came to realize that, we as a people can't ever be sovereign. Now I've heard the term autonomy, where we can make our own choices, regardless of what political entity is in charge of Hawaii. To be truly autonomous is to me, to be independent and sovereign as a people, as a ohana, as a community, whatever level. To just be able to grow our own food is the biggest act of political resistance that we can do as an occupied people. To grow our own food. In Puna, it's a very rocky environment. So, this is crushed rock and cinder. We don't have deep soil. So we're growing above the ground in a style called pu'e pu'e, where we mound up dead things and basically create our own soil through the process of decomposition. all indigenous people did it. It's just the practice of using dead stuff to cover the earth and then letting fungus, the mushrooms, the bacteria come in and the earthworms and everything to just decompose. A lot of people are growing kalo now in old sugarcane lands on the Big Island. I don't even call it soil. I call it dirt. Dirt is decomposed earth materials, kind of void of any organic material. It's like the decomposed rocks. It looks like soil, but it's just dirt. It's clay and powdery. It's not fluffy and greasy. Like if you walk into the forest floor is soft and there's just thousands of leaves that are there decomposing, feeding trees as well as the ecosystem in the soil and the lepos. I like to use the term pu'e because that's one of the terms that was used in Puna. Using what we have to grow where we are. And so our kupuna were such amazing engineers because they engineered their environments to cultivate ʻai. Getting back to autonomy, like it's important for us to learn that we don't need flowing water. We don't need a loʻi. A lot of the islands have been paved over. Housing developments built upon them. Just the context of the times, a lack of knowledge, American profit, capitalism, these things, but the styles of planting in Puna and Kona and some of the drier areas, it can be applied to everyone, even people in a condominium, or in a townhouse or apartment building. You can use these same principles. There's many different ways you can compost and decompose, but basically you're just trying to create a healthy soil ecosystem, and whatever you plant in there is going to be gonna thrive. People talk about sovereignty or Hawaiian autonomy now, and I don't mean to be rude, but I always, in my mind, I'm like, how much ulu trees you have planted, how much kalo you have. Because before we can figure out how we can feed our communities respectfully in each area, there's an understanding of shared kuleana and work, or even just in your backyard to have abundance where you can share with your neighbors. Like until we can come to that point, it's kind of premature to be having these conversations. If we're still dependent on the barge from America to come and bring us food, how can we talk about being a sovereign or autonomous or independent, whatever term you want to use, without the food, without the mala, because not everybody has flowing water anymore, without this to feed our ohana, our kaiāulu, our community, our ahupua'a, we really can't have those conversations yet.
Food sovereignty is such a big one that Uncle Kavika Lewis, it's so big on telling the students food sovereignty, and it's so important to grow your own food. And I love that the kids were learning about food sovereignty and how to grow your own food, because it is really important. Not everybody has land. What are some other ways that people can grow kalo that maybe just have a lanai, or maybe they don't have a lanai?
Oh, if you don't have lanai, you can, get involved in some community gardens in your area, or some mala or loʻi, volunteer days. A lot of those places, if you're a continual volunteer, especially on the huki, you get to take homes in a bin. You can look online for these ways, techniques, different materials you can use. You can use your food scraps at home to begin to build compost or organic material to plant in. Walk around your neighborhood, pick up dead leaves, and just keep mixing them with whatever you're able to create at home. And on your lanai, you can grow that. Kalo is interesting because it's not like a carrot, and what I mean by that is when you plant it, it doesn't grow down, it actually grows up. So as it's growing, each of the ha and the stems and the lau that grow, they're making another ring going up. We're on just crushed rock and cinder here, but we're building up around it as it keeps growing up. You could plant kalo on a cement slab. If you had stuff to keep whatever you were piling from blowing away, you can create your own systems that way. So in a pot, you could start at the bottom and then you just keep adding, every other week. Or the more attention and love that you give Kalo or Hāloa, our older brother, the better he will respond.
I know, like, there were way more varieties back in the day, but how many do we know of?
Two researchers, they went around, this is before Handy, and he's famous with his work with Pukui and documenting the Hawaiian planter and the native planters books that Bishop Museum has out, which has a lot of information about kalo and growing it in various environments. Prior to Handy, these two scientists went out and they collected 342 names of different kalo varieties. Now, some of those names may have been the same kalo that was called a different name in a different area, and that's very common. As of now, we have over 70 varieties of Hawaiian Kalo. So it's hard because there's been some that have been discovered in the forest in certain areas, in remote areas where they were found, West Maui, even in the forest here in Ola'a, that they were adapted to the microclimates where they were raised, and people grew kalo that were adapted to their specific area and microclimate because they grew best there. So when I would ask Uncle Jerry, oh, Uncle, what should I grow? I used to live Leilani before the eruption. Oh, Uncle, what should I plant in my mala in Leilani? And his response would be, I don't know, let me know. You know,
Trial and error.
Yeah, and I just like, what the hell does that mean? What he's saying is just, he doesn't know. He knows his space. Kalo is adapted to different environments, and and every environment in and of itself is different season to season based upon the rainfall.
You plant on you plant on a full moon, yeah?
I try to, yeah. Halu, Kua, Mahi'alani, those are kind of the moons I kind of prefer to plant on. And then on the new moons,
Difference between planting on a full moon versus a new moon?
there's so many factors.
Yeah.
I can tell you there's a significant difference in planting on the ole moons.
Yeah.
Yeah, even there's coal planted along the fence line over here, and we plant a lot of core sugarcane because it creates a lot of leaf litter that I can use to pu'e. So there's a couple areas that are missing, and those were planted on ole moons.
Okay.
And they're still super small, stunted. Those are significantly not as good in growing.
Another thing was that I had learned is Kalo takes 9 months, just like a baby.
On average.
Okay, so it's not always 9 months.
No, there's some varieties like Manaulu is a faster growing variety that is early as 7 months. Depends on the weather too, and irrigation. If you keep irrigating, they can go a little longer. But it's a faster growing variety. You really want it to be starchy and fleshy, and we call that i'o. It's fully matured. It's fleshy and meaty. When you cut it open, it's flaky and dry looking. That's the one you want to pound. If it looks like at the bottom, usually the bottom where it was first planted, it'll be a little bit more translucent color. That's where it's starting to change from being its peak starchiest. And when it's starchy, you add more water so it stretches it more. It can make a lot more actual poi. But when it starts to loli, you don't add as much water. It's much sweeter to eat as table taro, kalopa'a, but to kui is not ideal.
Have a favorite variety?
You know, that's funny. The reason it's funny is because there's a quote from Uncle Jerry Konanui, and it's like, "Oh, what's your favorite kalo variety?" And he's like, "Oh, the one in the bowl on the table." That's probably one of his more famous quotes. But what's my favorite one? I like that idea of e olulu kamealoa. Be grateful for what you have. My favorite kalo is I guess the ones that do well at my hale.
Okay. So any of these ones?
Well, these do really well, and some of these I've planted just for their significance. We have Pico lehua api'i. It has a crinkled leaf on the bottom. It's in the Pico family. The leaf cuts down all the way to the it's called the PDO junction. It's the Pico where the stem, the ha meets the lau. But that one, when my youngest boy, Kealohi, was born, that one was just growing huge, and it was just crazy. It was just like, oh, all of my kids have a kalo they're kind of associated with. My son Kalamakua, it was Ele Makoko when he was born, and then my daughter Ka'apuai, who is that's the name of one of my kupuna from Kauai. When she was born, the Apuai was just thriving, just calling like, "Hey, come check me out!" Every day, like my wife falling in love, like, "Oh, it's so beautiful." Some of them will be like, "Hey, come," like a beautiful wahine calling your name, like, "Hey, come check me out." They all have different significance in some way to me, and I'll always grow Pico lehua pi'i. And that's considered a loʻi kalo, but we're growing it here, and the kalos come good size, So the way I learned from Uncle Howard Konanui was after the kalo is i'o, the makua, the one you originally planted, and all the ohas, the babies grow on the side, you huki the mama, the makua, and then you just pu'e all around. You take some lepo or leaves, you just cover, and we've covered a few times since that huki, and these will continue to grow. And the ohas in Puna, they're called the pu'u. At least that's what Uncle Howard says his mom described the second generation, the Ohas. She called them the pu'u, and she said they always made the best poi. Um, but we leave them a few more months, 3, 4 months, from being the size of a quarter or maybe a golf ball. Will get a little bit larger. Or you can have multiple hookies from the same bed. Some varieties get larger than others. It depends on the variety. But I've found that if you pull your kalo earlier, they may not grow as large, but they will be a much higher quality as far as the poi that you produce. And to kui, pulling a little earlier isn't bad. 7 to 9 months, about 8 months is kind of the average for that, as far as I've seen in Puna. But some varieties you can leave in the ground a long time. Like we have Pico Ula Ula that does really well over here, and that one, the corm, when it grows, I've seen it rise out of the ground. I've had some growing that was over a year. Yeah, some of those picos is like 15 to 18 months. Even the pico variety can stay in the ground for a while. It's just knowing your varieties. Knowing your varieties is important, and having that intention when you're planting. Some varieties are gigantic, like the lauloas are huge. I mean, they're like tower. Even this one over here, Lehua Onio. It's a streaked variety. It kind of has these pink veins. But that one, I would say, is kind of a rare kalo. It's not even in the Bulletin 84, the UH book on varieties. But that one gets very large too. And it's got like purple streaks on the stem too. Yeah, they're all beautiful. They all get different purposes.
When I had came here from Oahu, I was like, where is the loʻi?
In Hilo, they would grow on the sides of streams, even some of the fish ponds. The practice of pulling up some of the mud from the bottom and packing some of the grasses around to kind of keep it in place. There's all these mo'olelos about planting, and I think that's the Waiakea Ahupua down by the Makai side, but they would engineer their areas around the water. Some of the manas, like Mana Ele was one that was, real dry. Some of the ula ulas, there's some that in the maninis, they are a little bit more adapted to the dry. But I have seen some of those varieties growing in loʻi too. But they would plant them on the sides of the loʻi so they could huki them earlier because they're not as adapted to being wet all the time. In Puna, if they were, real close to the kai, to the ocean side, they would go up into areas like Kipuka that were not covered by lava flows, and they would plant in these little deep soil Kipuka, or like areas that were kind of spared from Tutupele throughout the years, and they would plant in these areas. But they would also engineer even in the lava flows, or in the Puhala groves. There's so many different planting styles. If you guys want to check out native planters, Pahala style is really interesting. They use fire and burn the hala trees that they piled up and decompose. But so many adaptive, innovative ways to basically build lepo wherever you are. I do a lot of presentations in the schools and in the community where we're doing ku'i kalo. We had a whole hui from our Papa Kalai ʻāina, which is a class that I run both at Maku'u and in some of the charter schools where we teach mahi'ai practices while we're carving our papa and pohaku, our board and stone by hand. We can do hard things. Our kupuna did. We just gotta try and focus. That's a mixture of the ʻike that I learned from Konanui Ohana from Uncle Jerry, Auntie Gladys, Uncle Jerry's wife. We're all still learning. Anything I have is not mine. I love that design. This shirt doesn't have it, but the links in the chain. We all are just a link in the chain, and that chain goes all the way back, in this case, to Hāloa. Everybody wants papa and a pohaku because it's a symbol of Hawaii and Hawaiian culture. Papa and pohaku are so cool now. It's cool to be Hawaiian again, to have these mea Hawaii, these Hawaiian kind things. But if we don't listen and learn and try to collect and test it out in our environment and then pass that ʻike on of our experiences, then that ʻike is going to be lost. And what a shame that is.
I'm going to leave you with one question. If you could share one message with the younger generation about the importance of preserving the cultural and agricultural practices surrounding kalo, what would it be?
Well, my favorite olelo no'eau, I learned it from Uncle Kaipohale. He goes, oi ka'aka'ana maka. Or in the dictionary is written oi ka'aka'a kamaka, but he taught it to me oi ka'aka'a nāmaka, and it means while the eyes are still open. And what that means to me is advice that was given to anybody who is not in the older generation, not kupuna, but makua, keiki, that we need to listen and learn to those around us while their eyes are still open before they go moe and hala and pass away, because we have a kuleana to learn all that we can before they slip away, because they have all the tricks, all the techniques, like the things that I've learned from these kupuna who shared with me about planting, and that I still continue to learn because I'm still learning.
Yeah.
We all are. I'm not an expert. I'm just somebody who is a student. Every time we do something, it's an experiment. Oi ka'aka'a nāmaka is that reminder of our kuleana to learn all that we can while kupuna are still alive, who have been living these practices, and then we test them out and we carry them and we share them for the next generation. Just like your little logo with the links in the chain. Yeah, we are just one link, and if we don't listen, that chain that goes all the way back to Hāloa, to the akua, it's gonna be broken. All that ʻike is lost. In regards to malakain things, is go spend some time with some kupuna, be quiet and listen. Nana, look, olohe, listen, and kawaha, shut your mouth. If they ask you, you get questions, that's when you ask. You just be quiet, show respect, honor them, and helping them, you're gonna learn. Go and practice at home. Every time you kanu is an experiment. Right. Every season is different. Every year is different. Every moon phase is different. Test them out. Try the different varieties. Try the Maoli varieties, our native Kalo varieties, because they've been sustaining our people for a long time, thousands of years. So we need to perpetuate these. The UH hybridized Kalo because of our lack of understanding of how to be mahi'ai. They're blaming the Kalo that is not growing well, but it's really not the Kalo's fault. It's the mahi'ai's fault. It's us as kanaka who have destroyed the lepo through commercial agricultural practices, chemical pesticides, fertilizers, killed the soil. It's dead dirt now. You stick something that's used to growing in a healthy, beautiful environment, and then you go stick them in something that's dead, devoid of all living things, that microorganisms, that billions of organisms that sustain it. It's gonna suffer. Learning about building healthy lepo is probably the most fundamental thing. And before you kanu, plant stuff that you can use to feed your lepo. Plant. The most important part of growing kalo or anything in the mala is that we actually are growing healthy lepo. Momona is rich with life. The practices of the past took time. It's not now. We're thinking about the future, and these processes take time. The natural ways, the ways of our kupuna, they all take time. They're not fast. I'm a part of a couple different organizations, but you can follow me on Instagram at Hāloa Mauamau. HALOAMAU. And if you need different varieties, you can go to a lot of the seed exchanges or huli banks. There's some over here in Honoka'a. I have a small collection if people are looking for things. There's some in Kona as well. My friend Kiahi, Kaiana in Hamakua at the Kohala Center's Ag Test Field. Mahalo for coming.